Hello and welcome to Empires of Today. I am your host, Rafael Arriaza. We've got our 4 topics stacked up. First, starting with the conflict in Iran. Second is still having to do with Iran's connection specifically with the crashing crypto market. After that, few more developments on the situation in Cuba. And finally, what in the world is going on with the mayoral election in LA? Clock starts now with Iran. So the ceasefire is still technically in place, even though both sides have been exchanging fire. It appears that Iran did, in fact, shoot down an Apache helicopter in the Strait of Hormuz. Thankfully, both pilots did survive and were rescued. The U.S. retaliated against this by striking military infrastructure as well as energy infrastructure, specifically on Kharg Island, which is in the middle of the strait. Now, the situation is continuing to boil, even though the Trump administration is claiming that we are very close to a deal. The fact is we going to continue with this until the Iranians essentially give up. They've been around for well over 50 years. They have fail safes in place to essentially stay in power, as been shown through the fact that the IRGC has essential control over the entire government. They're pretty much not going anywhere until they absolutely can't. So at this point, we really do need to start getting some support. Regardless, though, it does appear that the U.S. has militarily secured the Strait of Hormuz by being able to, as it has stated, allow the passing of over 200 oil tankers in the recent weeks and days. So considering that, the war does seem to be winding down, but of course, there's still a lot of pain ahead. The fact is that Iran is really connected. The situation, the conflict, is extremely connected to the fact that crypto is crashing. The Iranian government created a $7.8 billion shadow economy specifically to get away from US sanctions, essentially to loophole around US sanctions and continue dealing with any of the other nations, any of its partners that are willing to deal with it economically. They have been mining Bitcoin for a significant amount of time at an extremely low price. It's estimated for around $1,300 a coin. If you know anything about Bitcoin, you'd know that's extremely low. And considering that, selling it back on the open market at 50% or more gains, this essentially allows for the Iranian government to have an extreme amount of money that is completely unsanctioned. Now, the strikes in February specifically targeted the mining operations. So they no longer have the ability to mine Bitcoin. That doesn't mean that they don't still hold a significant amount of Bitcoin. Just as recently as April, the US had to confiscate over $500 million of crypto assets attached to the IRGC. The fact is that crypto is crashing every time there's some escalation in Iran. Is there a connection? Is the US essentially causing this to happen or influencing it to happen to further debilitate the Iranian government? Well, I'd say the evidence essentially speaks for itself. Now on to Cuba. Turns out that just a few weeks ago, it was discovered that the Cuban government was actually importing drones from Russia with apparently the intention of attacking US sites and the mainland specifically. So we're talking about attacks planned on Guantanamo Bay, talking about potential attacks planned on the Florida Keys, and maybe any other military infrastructure that is around the region. This is of extreme significance considering the fact that the US is now weighing its options of taking military action against Cuba. Cuba is releasing videos that they are arming and training their civilians, but the fact is that they are in complete shambles in terms of the military. They have no navy. They have barely any air force, and their air defense systems are essentially set back decades. They have absolutely nothing that they could actually do against any sort of military operation from the United States. At this point, Cuba, it really is time to come to the negotiating table and figure out a way to get freedom for the people, and to actually start opening up relations which would benefit both Cuba and the United States. I would love to go to Cuba. I would love to see that country develop into what it is meant to be. Finally, the LA mayoral election. Karen Bass and Nitya Raman looks like they are going to be the candidates in the runoff election. This is strange if you were actually following it, because you would have seen that Spencer Pratt was in second place for a significant amount of time, really just 2 days before the final counts came in. And this morning it was certified that, in fact, Nitya Raman and Karen Bass would be the ones moving forward. Why this matters? Well, California is one of the few states which have essentially fully open-ended ballot harvesting. Okay, what this means is that there is absolutely no limit in the amount of ballots that a single person can gather. So those are absentee and mail-in ballots, and actually turn in. That means that there are third-party organizations that go out, essentially gather up ballots, absentee and mail-in ballots, and can just drop them off. And California has its law that states you can essentially continue counting the votes until they're all counted. So what happens, apparently, is that a lot of the homeless people that have been brought into LA in the past few decades, there's evidence that many of them were even paid to vote in this election. This is really grave because, of course, this isn't direct voter fraud like something that would happen in Venezuela. But if somebody or an organization can go out and essentially just gather up a bunch of ballots to sway the election one way or another, well, then are we ever going to see a truly fair election in California? I guess we'll have to wait and see for the governor's race. That's all we got for today. Short form, quick, no fluff. Come back next time in a couple days. We'll have 4 other topics to talk about. Please like, subscribe, and follow us anywhere that's available. I'll see you next time.